All right, we're going to get this Community Infrastructure Services Committee meeting going. We have a little bit of a long day ahead of us, so we will start with the one item for the first section of the Community Infrastructure Services Committee, and that is the winter sidewalk maintenance review. And staff's going to give a 10-minute presentation, and then we have a few delegations, and then we'll go to questions of staff. Welcome, Aaron. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock. Good morning to the committee and the chamber. My name is Aaron McCrimmon-Jones. My position here at the city is Transportation Planning Project Manager, and I've been tasked with overseeing the winter sidewalk maintenance review. I'm joined by Rosalind Lusk, Director, Operations, Roads and Traffic. As Council heard last week through Audit Committee, winter sidewalk maintenance is linked to the Comprehensive Service Review exercise, and the piece that we're discussing today is a deeper dive into the topic of winter sidewalk maintenance and studying different delivery options to inform long-term decision-making, which was a recommendation that came out of the Comprehensive Service Review. So discussion topics for today are project background, project objectives, the city's current winter sidewalk maintenance program, our engagement activities that we've completed to date, and the proposed winter sidewalk maintenance program for the 2018-2019 winter season and next steps. Project background. This is a topic with high public and stakeholder interest, and it brings a wide range of viewpoints and opinions about what role the city should play when it comes to clearing snow and ice from our sidewalks. In 2016, a report was submitted to Council which identified the impacts of citywide sidewalk snow clearing, notably the order of magnitude cost and the associated property tax increases if the city was to assume that work. In early 2018, through the 2018 budget issue paper, staff were requested to explore different options for clearing sidewalks, and shortly after, in February of 2018, staff initiated the winter sidewalk maintenance review. We should mention that one of the main triggers for this review is to understand if and what changes should be made to ensure sidewalks are a consistently safe mode of urban travel. Project objectives. The key objectives of the winter sidewalk maintenance review include the following: identifying, implementing, and evaluating different ways the city can approach winter sidewalk maintenance, and completing this evaluation over the winter of 2018-2019. To effectively evaluate options, staff will need to collect a range of quantitative and qualitative data on each of the proposed program components, and that includes actual cost, time to complete, required resources, property damage, salt use, and maybe most importantly, meaningful and informed public feedback about each of the proposed options. This data will be critical for helping us evaluate, but also demonstrate out in the field how each of these options perform, with what cost efficiencies, and which option or options carries the most public support. We will then use this data and evaluation as the basis to recommend a long-term winter sidewalk maintenance program in June of 2019. The city's current program. The City of Kitchener has a winter sidewalk maintenance program in place today, which includes the following. First, our existing snow and ice bylaw. This requires property owners to remove snow and ice from adjacent sidewalks within 24 hours after cessation of snowfall. The city provides this service at specific locations throughout the city, for example, in front of parks, community centers, along multi-use paths, to name a few. We complete this service for approximately 216 kilometers of sidewalk as it stands today, and we do that to meet our current bylaw standards. Also through the bylaw, private property owners are required to clear snow and ice from their adjacent sidewalks also within 24 hours after cessation of snowfall, with the exception of back-lotted sidewalks, which falls under the city's responsibility. And finally, our downtown core, which receives a higher level of service, which is funded by the downtown merchants. We would also like to make note of the updated provincial maintenance standards that were enacted very recently in May of 2018. The new standards have provisions specific to winter sidewalk maintenance, which are further detailed in the staff report. To partially address some of the new sidewalk provisions, staff are planning an update to the snow and ice bylaw for fall of 2018. Engagement activities. Through March to May of this year, staff carried out engagement activities with advisory committees and advocacy groups, including the Tri-Cities Transport Action Group, the Mayor's Advisory Council for Kitchener Seniors, the Kitchener Cycling Trails Advisory Committee, the Kitchener Youth Action Council, and the Grand River Accessibility Advisory Committee. The Environmental Committee were circulated on the staff report, and we are on their agenda for June 21st. We see their role being more important for helping us understand how to best evaluate and analyze any increase in salt use. We should also note that the Region of Waterloo Water Services Division has gladly agreed to be on our project team and work with us through data collection and evaluation of the program to better understand salt impacts. So to summarize as much as possible, the committees and advocacy groups were either supportive or generally neutral on our approach to collect data and evaluate different options before making a recommendation on a long-term strategy. But they all seem to understand the reasoning and justification for approaching the issue in this manner. Max and Grax made their positions clear that public engagement is important, but ultimately sidewalks are a city responsibility. TriTag and Kitchener Cycling and Trails Advisory Committee generally supported a data and evaluation-based recommendation, but felt our current approach to sidewalk maintenance is simply not working. Kayak recognized that citywide sidewalk maintenance is a large endeavor and suggested exploring options for assisting those who are unable to maintain sidewalks on their own. The feedback from these groups was valuable, and it helped form some of the content that you find in the staff report, and we plan to continue working with them over the coming year. The proposed winter sidewalk maintenance program. As a result of requirements collecting, stakeholder interviews, a cross-divisional workshop, and SWOT analysis, that is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, 3 preferred service delivery models have been identified and 1 remote monitoring practice. Arriving at these options was a collaborative effort, and it included subject matter experts from all 5 of the city's departments, including community services, development services, infrastructure services, corporate services, and financial services. The 4 new options, which are detailed in the staff report in terms of scope, objectives, delivery, and costing, are as follows. Component A, proactive inspection. This includes 1 proactive bylaw officer to assist with sidewalk inspections citywide. Supplemental to Component A, and for the purpose of the staff report, we are referring to Component E, is the partnership grant. And this would fund assisted sidewalk and windrow clearing services through the working center for up to 50 properties. Component B, initial clearing for 8-centimeter snow events. This will include clearing services for 8-centimeter snow events in an evaluation area containing approximately 40 kilometers of sidewalk or approximately 1,500 homes. We see this service as being contracted out to a third party, and we should note that we would promote this as a shared initiative between the city and property owner, where the city is responsible for the heavy lifting on those heavy snow events. We should note the trigger would coincide with our current snow event declaration. Component C, full winter maintenance of all sidewalks, which will include clearing services for all snow and ice occurrences in an evaluation area also containing approximately 40 kilometers of sidewalk or 1,500 homes, and we see that service as being completed by in-house resources. And finally, Component D, the sidewalk pavement weather sensor stations, which includes 2 strategically located sensor stations that are designed to remotely provide real-time data regarding pavement temperature, subsurface temperature, and pavement condition. For example, if the pavement is snow or ice covered, wet or dry, and the thickness of that cover. The intent being we want to learn how to use this data to be more efficient about our response to snow and ice, as well as our salt use, and be more informed about Kitchener's microclimates, which may lead to prioritizing our responses. In addition, these sensors will contribute to the new monitoring provisions found in the updated provincial maintenance standards, and the data generated will also be useful to our asset management team. Together, these 4 new components, including supplemental Component E, combined with our existing winter sidewalk maintenance program, form the proposed program for evaluation through the 2018-2019 winter season. Next steps. If staff are provided the direction to proceed with the proposed program over next winter, our next steps will start with the detailed development of program components July through October, and that includes identifying evaluation areas, the detailed development of our communication and engagement activities, procuring resources, and developing our data collection and evaluation methodologies. Come October, November, we'll commence with our public engagement and implement the new program components. Over the course of the winter season, we'll collect data, carry out engagement, and complete our evaluation, and we plan to commission a citywide statistically valid survey in the spring of 2019, and that survey will include questions that are informed by the data and evaluation completed. And then we'll return to Council in June of 2019 with a recommended long-term plan for winter sidewalk maintenance. So we'd like to thank committee for listening today, and we'd also like to extend a big thank you to our advisory committees and to staff for providing us with their guidance this far. And with that, I'll turn it over to Denise McGoldrick, General Manager, Operations, to conclude our presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. As Aaron noted at the beginning of his presentation, the winter maintenance review was presented to Council last Monday, and the audit report was comprehensive and identifies 75 recommendations for consideration. Staff are committed to following through with the recommendations, and over the next 3 months, we will be prioritizing the recommendations and creating action plans. Recognizing the importance of winter sidewalk maintenance to Council and the community, staff initiated the winter sidewalk maintenance review concurrently with the comprehensive winter review. Staff heard through the discussion at last week's audit committee that Council expressed interest in an issue paper on a windrow program options for the 2019 budget process. I want to emphasize that this is a significant body of work, and it is not feasible to initiate both a windrow program and a winter sidewalk maintenance program for this coming winter. The focus of efforts has been developing a winter sidewalk maintenance program. This is important work and a best practice to test service delivery options and have meaningful data and feedback for decision making. We have learned from other municipalities who have implemented citywide sidewalk maintenance programs where citizen satisfaction has decreased following implementation. And Kitchener's approach responds to the audit report recommendation to utilize data to evaluate changes to the program. It is a smart thing to do. I also want to confirm that the winter sidewalk maintenance components will evaluate a partnership program to clear sidewalks and windrows for elderly and persons with disabilities. Staff are prepared to bring forward windrow program options when we report back to Council in June 2019 with the results of the winter sidewalk maintenance evaluation and recommend a preferred program for implementation. We ask for Council's patience to allow this necessary analysis to take place. Any recommended changes to either winter sidewalk maintenance and/or windrows on a long-term basis would be referred to the 2020 budget process. And with that, Aaron, Roslyn, and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have 3 people in the queue. I've marked down your names, now 4, but we're going to go to the delegations before we ask questions of staff. So you can queue out, and then I have you down in order. So our first delegation, and you have 5 minutes to make your presentation, is Mike Bose from Tri-Tag.
Thanks. Any way I can get a little more height on the desk here? I know.
No, Diane, it's okay. The clerk.
Yeah, I've been here before. Every time it feels like I'm a James Bond villain when this happens. Good morning, Chair Galloway-Selak, members of Council. My name is Mike Bose. I'm a member of the Tri-Cities Transport Action Group, and we advocate for better walking, cycling, and transit within Waterloo Region. And winter sidewalks is one of our sort of top areas of focus at the moment, along with safer streets, complete cycling grid, changing the incentives around transportation through zoning and land use, transit frequency, and some of our experiments with data and coding. But here to talk about our sidewalk study that we did in the winter of 2017. So there's a story told of a police officer who's on the night shift, walking down the street, and encounters a man underneath a street lamp on his hands and knees, and probably a little bit inebriated. And the officer, she asks him, "What are you doing?" "Looking for my keys," he replies. The officer asks, where did you drop them?" "Oh, about a block that way, but the light's better over here." One of the things that cities have is a lot of data, and sometimes it's very easy to use that data that they already have to try and make good decisions, but it may not actually shed light on the areas that on the questions that are trying to be answered. And so in 2016, the report Aaron mentioned earlier looked at complaint volumes, costs for city-led plowing of sidewalks, but it didn't look at what was the impact for mobility, which in our minds was the primary reason why you would want to keep sidewalks clear of snow in the winter. And so what we set out to do was we went and counted sidewalks. We got together a team of 29 volunteers. We looked at 12 Kitchener streets, about a kilometer length, probably 2 kilometers when you consider sidewalks on both sides, and went out on 6 different dates and counted how many sidewalks had uncleared snow or ice, anything that would pose a mobility issue for someone with an unsteady gait, pushing a wheelchair or stroller, what have you. And we also looked at the corners, curb cuts, because that's a particular problem area where it's a bit ambiguous where the ownership lies for keeping snow cleared in that area. So what we found was that, as you might expect, the more snow you had in the last few days, the more problem spots you'd find along the sidewalk. But what was really interesting from our results was that on days where you had no snow in the previous 3 days, we were still seeing about 1 incidence of snow or ice on the sidewalk about every 80 meters, which seems high to us. And we can plug that into a probability model for how far can I walk out my front door in the winter without encountering ice or snow. And the answer is not very far. Once you walk about 50 meters, you're about 50% likely to have encountered ice or snow so far. Once you get to 100 meters, you're about 80%, regardless of how much it's snowed in the last few days. And if you're at the very edge of sort of bus station catchment area, you have almost no hope at all, statistically speaking, based on what we found, of being able to get to the bus stop. So in our minds, our current system of keeping sidewalks clear is failing our residents. And so what we recommended was that the city, we were only able to look at our current bylaw. We weren't able to compare with programs where the municipality is responsible for clearing streets. So we suggested a pilot where we look at proactive enforcement, status quo, and city-led plowing, and in using mobility as our primary metric. And we're pleased to see the staff recommendation come forward today. It aligns very well with what we've been proposing, and we're very grateful for the attention staff have given, the feedback they've been able to incorporate, and I'm out of time. I just want to wrap up by stressing that we need to make sure that we're measuring mobility as our primary metric here. Even if we're looking at the new provincial standards, simply saying whether we meet them or not does not necessarily say that we're enabling people to be able to walk and be able to get around and get to the bus stop and live their everyday lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. There are a few questions for you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock. Mike, thank you so much for coming in. I'm happy to hear that you're pleased with the report and what's in it. I just want to maybe gain some sort of idea of what you would say is a reasonable time for sidewalks to be cleared. I know you'd mentioned that, in your speech there are 3 days went by where snow wasn't removed, but if something was adopted across the city, how long would you like to see before all the sidewalk snow is cleared off?
That's a good question. My preference would be is if we could clear it right away. The challenge is in implementing that. So I think having a day's time frame is reasonable. The challenge with the current 24 hours after the most recent snowfall policy is we quite often see snow come down for several days in a row. And so you can have almost a week go by without any ability to trigger enforcement on clearing sidewalks. So we need something that at least triggers some interim snow clearing if there's several days worth of snow.
This is a concern of mine because, as you know, when snow falls and we go out and we start plowing streets, if it snows again, we have to go back and reset, which delays residential streets and things like that. My concern is that, with this amount of money that we would be spent on this, there would be a pretty high expectation level for service. So, again, we're trying to drill down as to what you would expect. So, again, maybe just your further input on the ability to clear the streets and maybe what you might suggest if we are under provincial regulations that tell us we have to reset.
Right. Well, as I understand it, the provincial regulations, they're quite weak. So they give 48 hours rather than 24 hours for a response. And the response only takes place after there's 8 centimeters of accumulation of snow. Have I got that right? Okay. So if we're to use the provincial standard or the provincial guidelines as our standard, then I would say that we're probably backsliding a little bit because we're going from 24 hours to 48 hours, and we're only clearing it when we've got more than 8 centimeters. That said, it would mean that we're somewhat more consistently applying snow clearing across the city rather than depending on the ability or goodwill of residents to follow the bylaws.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Mayor Veranovic?
Thanks, and thanks a lot for coming in, Mike, and for all of your groups, along with all the other groups, work on this issue. A couple things. One of the things we hear about from time to time is that the experience in some cities, including some nearby, that have this service, it hasn't necessarily been great. And yet, in other places, we hear more positive things. I'm wondering if TriTag has sort of done any look at other cities and has a sense of, what's working, what's not working. Are there places, best practices we should be looking to as we go forward in addition to the pilot work that's being proposed?
We haven't directly gone out and surveyed other cities to see how people feel or how effective their snow clearing programs are. I can speak for myself as an able-bodied person growing up in Ottawa, which is a city where the city took responsibility for all sidewalks. I don't recall encountering any difficulties at that time, but in terms of other cities' experiences, I would say we could be looking to winter cities, not just in North America, but also in Scandinavia, where winter clearing is a large problem. I know Finland has done a lot of research into keeping bicycle paths clear, which may have extendability to understand some other mobility issues.
Well, excuse me. In fact, that was going to take me in the second direction I wanted to go to, Do you have a sense from the work and the research that you've done in terms of how much we're likely to see people walking more or cycling more in the winter months if we had a better snow removal regimen in place?
If I may go back to Finland as an example, and I know this is related to cycling, but they had winter maintenance programs for their in Oulu, Finland, for their bike paths, and they counted the numbers, and the number of people riding their bikes in the winter fell to 10% of their sort of summer baseline after the first big snowfall, and they had a delayed response in clearing their paths. So I think we might see similar sorts of changes in behavior after people encounter for the first time in winter a big snowfall, and they'll sort of change their travel patterns or stay home if they run into difficulties and not bother trying again until things start to thaw.
But so in other words, it's really important that we want to encourage sort of healthier transportation modal choices, i.e. walking or cycling, including in the winter months. A, it's doable because it happens in other parts of the world, but B, it does require a higher and more consistent level of service.
Yes. I think we also see that in our local transit numbers. If we have difficulty walking to the bus stop, we'll stop taking the bus. And we do see, compared to the fall months, the winter months see a decline in transit use, if I recall correctly.
And this has been an issue of concern with you folks as well, has been one to be dealt with at the region, but the whole notion of how quick transit stations are cleaned, correct?
Yes. And it's our belief that if we can somehow coordinate the two, so that the people clearing the sidewalks aren't dumping snow on the bus stops, and people clearing the bus stops aren't dumping snow on the sidewalks, we would all have an easier time taking transit.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation, Mike. I appreciate the data. It is eye-opening. Just one question as we go through this process. Do you think, and I'm not sure if, I think TriTag, is the position essentially we don't really care how you do it as long as you do accomplish sidewalks more clear consistently? Yes.
Obviously we want something that is going to be cost effective and realistic. We try not to propose anything that is beyond anything feasible, but ultimately, if we have a way that we can make our bylaw system work more effectively and more equitably, then by all means we should pursue that. But if we are not able to achieve mobility for everyone with our bylaw system, then we do need to look at other options.
Okay, that actually led into my next question then. So you do believe, or you at least believe, that we should look at options, that it's possible, whether it's punitive or like carrot versus stick. Do you think that's something that is possible, that we could get the sidewalks cleared by being more punitive with residents that do not clear the sidewalks? It's a tough question, but it's one we're grappling with, right?
TriTag doesn't have a position on which method to choose, but I think there are limits to how far we can get with punitive measures, in part because there are some problem property owners that will just ignore the bylaws regardless. And you're going to have a mix of different qualities of one neighbor may clear sidewalks and unfortunately dump tons of salt. Someone may use no salt at all and leave things a bit iced over. I see the value in municipal lead cleaning as there being consistency throughout the city.
Very good, thank you.
Councillor Yunetsky.
A couple of questions that I just want to get your opinion on, and the various options that we have here. What do you do in a situation if it's adopted that we go with 8 centimeters or more, the city will take care of it? But let's say one day you get 2 or 3 centimeters of snow and nothing happens, and then maybe the next day you get another centimeter or so, and a period of a week can go by where you get 2 inches here, 2 centimeters here, another 1 here, another 2 here. You still haven't reached 8 at the end of the week, and nothing happens, and people city doesn't do anything in terms of clearing, just leaves it up to the property owners. Does that sit well with you?
It's my understanding that it's not a single snowfall that triggers the 8 centimeters, but it's the accumulation. So, are you, just for clarity, are you saying this is a situation where you hit 7.5 centimeters, for instance?
No, I'm just saying you get a couple of centimeters one day, and then, they're light snowfalls, as opposed to one big dump of 8 to 10, 15 centimeters, which is a real big snow event. But you get, 2 or 3 consistent days of flurries and light snow.
So I would say that this is the challenge of relying on a metric that is like the provincial guidelines, which we do now have an obligation to meet. But I would say it's insufficient to say, those requirements are insufficient to provide mobility. They're necessary, but you need to actually be monitoring the mobility impacts of the sidewalk clearing policy. And so whether that triggers an earlier snow clearing on certain sidewalks, or whether we determine that if it's cost prohibitive to do things beyond 8 centimeters, then we do need to look at other options. I think what we're more concerned with is the outcome, not are we following any particular standard.
So, in terms of the response that you provided, would you like to see the city clear all the sidewalks, regardless of how much snow falls? If you get 1 centimeter, get the crew out there and just, with the brushes, take it off, because it could just be a light one. Just do it every time there's a snowfall, no matter how light. I mean, that's the ideal, isn't it?
I think the idea is for us to understand how different policies and applications of snow clearing technology impact mobility. And so we aren't saying that 8 centimeters is going to, or sending the plows out after 8 centimeters is going to meet the rule. We don't know whether 4 centimeters or whether it's 10 centimeters. What we're saying is we need to go out and measure and see how people are able to get around in their communities on their sidewalks. So we aren't saying go and whenever there's a single snowflake that falls, send the plows out. What we are saying is we need to have a better understanding of how our policies impact mobility.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, to Mike. Mike, thanks for coming in. When you talk about consistency across the city, how would you react, or your group react to, if to be consistent, it would be cleared by the city every 72 hours? Because what has been happening, I think, is that through this whole debate, what I am hearing is it may very well, even if the city clears sidewalks, could take that to clear sidewalks. I don't think that would be acceptable to you, am I correct?
So, I don't, as I understand it, the municipalities are now required by the province to act within 48 hours, whether that be through their bylaws or through plowing. But certainly I would say that if we do have a consistent policy that results in everywhere having uncleared sidewalks most of the time, then that's not a win either. What we need to do is be able to maximize the freedom that we're giving to everyone with the resources that we have. And so I think part of what staff have proposed and what we have proposed, the point of it is to get a better understanding of what are the implications of each policy on how we can get around. And with that information, then we can make an informed choice. Today is not about choosing which method to go forward with permanently. It's about choosing how to go about understanding what's the best way forward.
Fair enough. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Marsh?
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for your presentation. I just want to say thank you to yourself and the many TriTag volunteers who took the time out of your busy day and many days to complete the study and share it with our staff and collaborate with the city. I'm looking forward to next steps. Is TriTag going to continue to be involved in the next steps?
As I understand it, staff have expressed interest in continuing to talk with us as plans are formed. We're hoping to be able to give feedback, especially when it comes to looking at protocols for being able to measure how effectively sidewalks are being cut clear.
Great. And on a separate side note, the new provincial regulations look at cycling lanes as well. So it'd be great to get TriTag's take on that. I don't want to go in that direction at the moment, but I think that TriTag will be instrumental in helping us understand the best way forward in that regard as well. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, excuse me. I want to be clear on your organization's where you're heading, and I don't disagree with where you're going. But if mobility is the prime factor here, mm-hmm. And you're concerned, you want to have easy mobility, even when you have about 2 or 3 inches or centimeters, mm-hmm. mobility becomes difficult, right? Yes. How much snow could you have where mobility is okay? Does 1 centimeter? I know walking, you can have 1 centimeter of snow on the ground, and it can be difficult.
Right, and I think it goes in part to how those sidewalks are maintained. I know there are some places, some municipalities where they deem, 1 centimeter of crushed snow to be acceptable versus, 1 centimeter of untreated snow might not be. Personally, speaking for TriTag, we don't have a particular stance on what the threshold of good or bad snow. I would say your subject matter experts on that would be the folks on MAX and GRAC, and we should be seeking their opinion on what is the minimum clearance trigger for residents.
Okay, and I accept that. You're advocating for as much as possible to improve mobility, and I don't disagree with that. So
as much as feasible.
Yeah. Well, yes, but I get the other point I want to make though is you've read the report. You see where staff are recommending, mm-hmm. and do I understand correctly that you're satisfied to go in that direction for the time being to further investigate the whole situation? Is
yes,
that correct? Yeah.
I think what we're going to learn from that is going to be valuable. If we do determine that clearing sidewalks through our property owners is the best that we can get, then absolutely we should continue with that. But if we're able to effectively, and one of the things I think, you know, out of TriTag's recommendations, we looked at 3 different models. The current model, something a bit more proactive in terms of enforcement, and then completely city-led clearing. I really appreciate the fact that staff have sort of come forward with a hybrid model. And so you get the best, in theory, the best of both worlds, where you have the city plows coming when there's a big snow dump, and you're most likely to create recurring winter mobility problems. That's when the city is able to intervene. And for the day-to-day, we still have a stopgap of local residents able to clear the sidewalks in the interim.
Thank you. At this point, though, it is you're supporting where the staff are going at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Mike, for coming in. I always value your opinion and everything that TriTag and yourself do for our community. The one question I would like to ask, and I don't think it was in the report, what city staff found was that other communities that have the sidewalk removal by the municipality found that when city staff went to do the removal, they found that 40% of the sidewalks were already cleared. So do you think having a system in place with that kind of number turnout, do you think the system that we would replace would be efficient and sustainable?
Are you suggesting for, I can't remember the option numbers, but the fully city-cleared option?
Pretty well, yeah.
Yeah.
Because to me, that doesn't seem like an economical solution. I'm just wondering if you think that that's an economical solution.
Well, I guess you are passing over a certain number of driveways and properties where someone will have already gone out and cleared. But that said, we are already doing that to some degree because the properties that the backlotted streets and all of the city parks and city-owned properties that the city takes responsibility for clearing, we're already having to take our plows and drive them from site to site. And that seems rather inefficient to me if they're driving adjacent to a sidewalk from one location to another. Why aren't they also taking advantage of that plow and clearing the sidewalks in between? So, yeah, it's possible that things aren't very efficient. I think for the snow events, you're probably more likely than not to be getting very good value out of the plowing that you're doing. And perhaps for the light dustings, the plows might not be the most efficient use. And so, again, looking to the hybrid model, I think we might be seeing the best of both worlds. But we haven't tested it yet. We don't know.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
And that is all the questions we have for you, Mike. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
All right, up next we have Sharon Giles and Don Cleland from GRAC.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for your patience while I get organized here. My name is Sharon Giles, and I'm the present co-chair of GRAC. I would like to thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, and councillors, for allowing us to speak on this issue today. It's very near and dear to our hearts, as you can imagine. We issued a position paper on this issue in January of 2017. Our position has not changed. I do have copies with me if you're interested in seeing them. Since then, we've spoken at every opportunity to make our position known on this, and we certainly have. I'm not going to bore you by reading that paper, but I would like to mention one key point that we are concerned about. We cannot stress the importance of consistency when you leave your home. Your next-door neighbor may shovel just fine, and the one 3 doors down may do that too. But the 2 homes in between have not done their duty. Therefore, you are not able to get safely where you need to go. And the program outlined has not addressed this problem at all. You're still going to get stuck, at some point. There are days when I cannot make it to the bus stop, a lot of them. Another concern that we have about the plan is that it is basically complaint-based driven, the stats that you have. Your complaint statistics range from 1,323 in the year 2017 to 2,877 in the year 2015, with 3 years in between. I have trouble believing that in a city of over 200,000 people, that only 2,800 are dissatisfied with the condition of the sidewalks. This is very, very skewed data. It's not accurate enough to make a decision on how to handle this. There are not that many people that are willing to rat out their neighbors. I have difficulty with the sidewalk in front of my building. If I had to call and complain, it would be on my landlord, which probably isn't a really good idea. Another component of your plan is one proactive enforcement officer. We don't feel that one person can successfully monitor the condition of the sidewalks in the city. And phase 2 is going to depend a lot on the data that this person collects, and we don't feel it's sufficient. We applaud the city for giving such attention to this, and we do know that it's a really hot topic. The report is well researched, and we recognize the need for waiting for the provincial standards to come down. But you aren't you just delaying the inevitable? The best way to do this is, of course, the city takes over sidewalk snow clearance. Why not join the other cities in Canada who recognize that the responsibility of sidewalk snow clearance is a municipal problem? Why not help create a community where no one is left behind? And I'd like you to Dawn.
I'm Dawn Cleland, also part of GRAC. The reality is the people we represent really don't have a lot of choices. Some are blind and they cannot drive. They can't just hop in a car and go somewhere. They're very, very limited. Our current model is very expensive for people who have exceptionalities. We have, the mobile units that go out and pick people up, but we only have so much of that available. What we're doing right now is not working, and the cost is people. We spend a lot of money on ION or EON, whatever way you want to say it, but the reality is if you can't, and you know what, it's so encouraging to see how much you care that these stops are accessible. Like, that is a real kudos to you. You really are hearing. But if you can't get to the stop, why does it matter for half of the year? This is so vital to a large group of our people. And it's going to get larger because we do have an aging population. We got proactive about this light rail transit. We need to be proactive about this too. It's not going to go away. We're going to be in Canada, and the weather isn't getting any better. It's exciting to see we're going to do something. I really think that now is the time, and I really think that you are going to get more complaints, guaranteed, but it's because you're going to be taking more responsibility. Don't be afraid of the complaints. The metric, this gentleman was correct, the metric is about accessibility. It's always got to be about this because we're doing it for people.
Thank you very much for your presentation. There's at least a couple questions for you. Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks, Sharon and Dawn, for coming in and sitting around the table. I've heard time and time again the passionate pleas for us to make mobility a priority in our community during the winter seasons. One of the questions I have, and I don't know if we've really batted it around, GRAC, is do you see that there should be a prioritization of where some of this winter maintenance should go, or do you prefer across the city snow clearing of sidewalks?
Well, the reality is, down, like any of the area where shops are, stores are, things like that, I mean, that's essential that things get cleared right away. Anything where transit systems are traveling, that's really important. Quite frankly, everyone needs to be able to get out of their houses and go places. It needs to be done throughout the city. Where people live, you need to have something in place for them to be able to get around.
Right, okay. I know it was a tough question, but I thought you guys deal with it maybe more so than myself, who presently is an able-bodied person, but when I'm helping my parents who are not, I sort of look to the areas that we're going to make sure that they're accessible, but not necessarily my street, which would not be accessible for a long time because it's a court. One of the things that I know we talked about is windrows and transit stop clearings. Those seem to be delayed, and one of the concerns I have is if we start down the road of clearing everything in the city, that those may fall under that new umbrella, that new regulation. Is that something that you're concerned with?
I think, generally speaking, that certainly the roads have to be part of this solution. There's no sense for the city to come along and shovel the sidewalks or plow the sidewalks when the snowplow comes 2 minutes later and blocks off the curb cut. So this has to be a combination, cooperation situation. There are ways to, as I understand, just from what I've heard, there are ways to plow in such a way that the curb cuts are not, blocked in at every sweep of the corner. So it certainly has to be a two-way cooperation thing, because that's the other issue. You might get down to the street and you can't get across the road. So that's a very, very good point.
Okay, great. Thanks again for coming in, and I'm sure that the rest, I've seen your issue paper, but maybe the rest of council will be interested in what you guys have worked on so hard on this issue. Thank you.
Mayor Verbanovic?
Thank you very much, and thank you to both of you for coming in today and for being such strong advocates about this issue, not just today, but for some time. Sharon, you mentioned in your presentation that there's been many days when you haven't been able to make it to your bus stop. What happens then? Like, what are the alternatives for you?
If I can arrange Mobility Plus, which is a wonderful service because it's door to door, then I don't have to worry about that. But that requires a week's planning. That you have to book your ride a week or 5 days ahead to get a Mobility Plus ride. If it truly is non-passable for me, I have to stay home. And isolation is certainly a factor.
So there's the issue of isolation. I guess you'd have to, and I've come to appreciate some of this just with my temporary little disability. You have to rely on others for groceries and different things like that, depending on the nature of this.
And by the end of the winter, I think a lot of us have cabin fever.
Yeah, no.
Because it's just too much trouble to try and get out.
As a member of GRAC, have you talked to people at all in other cities?
Yes,
like other GRAC committees where, GRAC type of committees where some that do, some that don't, and what are their experiences?
The best conversation I can tell you about is with somebody from Elmira, who just, one of our townships. They shovel the snow in Elmira, have no problems at all with it. It's great, they all love it. It happens in North Dumfries. So it's not like it's not happening right around us. That they talk to these people, the city of Ottawa, where Rheta lives, and certainly there's a snow issue there, for the winters. Talk to these people and see what they're, I don't like the conversation getting kind of hung up on how close it has to be bare pavement or it has to be 1 centimeter, whatever. That's really not a problem, because for you to ask me what I can get through is far different than somebody using a walker or a manual chair, for example. Just anything that is going to make it a significant improvement. I mean, if there's an inch of snow on the ground, I think we can all live with that. You know, it's just getting it to the point where there's a consistency and where there's ways to get through.
Okay. Great, that's all I have. Thank you.
Councillor Schneider?
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. Sharon and Donna, thank you so much for coming in today and in the past and sharing your concerns. I just wonder if there's been any discussion on the GRAC committee about what an acceptable period of time might be to have the snow cleared from the sidewalks after a significant snowfall?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How long would it be acceptable for you to be inside your house needing to go out without the snow cleared? Like, that's what this is a human thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is, I mean, it's the best we can do, right? We're looking at the best we can do. It's for people. The reality is, I've got 2 feet and I can walk and I'm fine, and that's great. But the reality is, a lot of people can't. And I don't know how this impacts their mental wellness or anything like that, but I do know that if it was me, I would really want it done as soon as possible. And I would want anything that had a hill to be done sooner rather than later, because I wouldn't want to be going skidding down a street if I was in a wheelchair. I wouldn't want to be, like, I think that logic and common sense and reason is most important here. And I think hills are the most dangerous. We haven't, like, we want it as soon as possible. But you know what? Possible's the key word. Mm-hmm. Just empathize. Just imagine yourself in that situation. Imagine yourself wanting to get from point A to point B, knowing you've got to schedule 5 days with Mobility Plus, and what would you want to see? And then you know what? You guys will all make the perfect decision. I know it. It's easy.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could just add, I think you'll find that common sense will prevail with people who are most affected by this issue. Like, it's silly of me to expect that every street in the city is going to be cleared within 24 hours. Like, that's really silly. But if I can count on the fact that 3 days after a major snowfall, I can safely get down my sidewalk, that's great.
Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, actually, you've somewhat answered. I'm taking it, and I don't disagree with you, that you're looking at the city to completely do everything. You just said that you would even be could live with 72 hours, but that's yeah. So I'm glad to know where your stance is. Okay, that's what you would prefer. Okay, right now. Have you seen what staff has come forward with? They're looking at different alternatives, one where we do it completely, one where we do it on a limited basis. Are you okay with proceeding with that study to see where we're going, so then we have a better understanding of what the cost is, what's involved? Are you okay with the direction we're moving in? Or do you want to see things happen faster?
Yes. I think that the position of the city to collect data is probably, if the data is collected the right way, is going to just prove that this has to be done to make everything good for all. And not just people like myself in a wheelchair, but seniors, young mothers with strollers, the whole population that's affected by this. It's huge. Once again, I don't think collecting the data based on the number of complaints is realistic. That just doesn't work. I'm just wondering if this is just a delay of the inevitable.
And that's a legitimate concern, and hopefully I think we're moving in the right direction, and I just wondered how you feel about because if we move in the direction that staff are recommending, and if we do move forward, they're saying by 2 years from now, something will be in place. So, you're okay with that, or you'd rather see it move faster?
I'd rather see it move faster.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
We've been waiting a long time.
Thank you so much, Sharon and Dawn, for coming in. That's all the questions that we have for you. Thank you. Up next, we have Leslie Maxwell.
I'd like to see how tall you think I am. Bring it up. Thanks, Madam Chair and councillors, for listening to everyone today and for inviting us to come and speak. I'm glad I squeaked in under the delegation timeline last Friday and got this in. I represent Student Transportation Services of Waterloo Region here today. I work with the School Bus Consortium, and of course most of my colleagues work on getting kids to school by bus. But my job, as many of you know, is to assist and support the kids who walk and cycle to school. The other part of my mandate is to reduce traffic in front of schools. So this topic touches both of my mandates quite deeply. I'm here today essentially because a parent asked me to come in her stead. She is not available because there's an illness in her family, but this topic is very meaningful to her, and I see my slide is much smaller than I thought it would look like, and we can't really see. I wanted to first start by saying our consortium does a pretty good job of encouraging kids and families to choose active travel regardless of what the weather looks like. Our one kind of mantra in this stead is that there is no bad weather, there is just bad gear. So we encourage everybody to find the right gear and to find ways to get to school regardless of what the weather is like. And I can't even read that because I don't have my glasses on, so bear with me. But one of the things we tell people is that we've been walking under these conditions for decades, and you know, we want to still kind of support and train our kids that the weather isn't going to break us. And we are Canadians, after all, we should walk. We encourage them to use a thick lug sole footwear and to not be discouraged by the weather. But the truth is, when we look at the sidewalks that they are asked to pass, they're often impassable by small legs, and the strollers of their siblings whose parent, you know, when they're supervised by their parents. So the young families in our school boards, or in our school communities, have the toughest time getting to school under these conditions. Here's just one photo that the parent who asked me to read her letter today shared with us, and it's really the windrow, but you can also see the sidewalk isn't well cleared behind it. And this is in the Chicopee Hills school area. She also snapped a picture of her young son trying to get over one of those windrows, and her letter speaks to this. So I'm just going to read her letter for you. Dear INS Committee, I am requesting that the area surrounding Chicopee Hills Public School be considered for the snow removal pilot project. I'm a mother of 4 young children under the age of 8, 3 of whom currently attend Chicopee Hills Public School. During the winter months, there were many days that I was unable to walk the children to and from school safely due to the sidewalks and boulevards not being cleared. I push a double stroller with 2 young children walking on either side of me, and I've had to go into the road, which is clearly not a safe option, in order to get past an unshoveled boulevard. Being on the road with 4 children in inclement weather should not ever have to be an option. Not to mention that my stroller got stuck in the middle of the road while trying to get to school one day, and I had to abandon it and turn around and drive to the school where there are no parking spots readily available for parents, as we aim to be a walking school. I truly believe that Chicopee Hills cannot be deemed a walking school when it is clearly unsafe to physically walk to and from school during the winter months. I'm not the only parent who feels this way. I'm a member of the parent council at the school, as well as the transportation committee, who is in support of the sidewalks being cleared so that the children of Chicopee Hills and surrounding schools can get to and from school safely. I planned to attend the City Council meeting this Monday, today, however, unfortunately, will be unable to attend. Instead, I've attached these photos from my own personal experience walking to and from school, and Chicopee Hills is an amazing school and has an amazing community. However, this is a safety challenge that many parents face daily during the winter months. If it could be rectified by having the city clear sidewalks and boulevards so that children's safety is not put at risk, we would appreciate it. Not only can a stroller not go through such high mountains of snow, but it is not safe for children to be climbing these mountains, leaving them at risk of falling into the road. Please take this letter into consideration when deciding on which areas to pilot for snow removal. The Chicopee Hills community would benefit a great deal to be part of this project. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you. With my last 11 seconds, I will say I am in 7 schools. Parents across your city have the same concerns. This committee is vocal, and they'd love to be part of the pilot project, but they're all excited to see what you can do with it.
Thank you very much, Leslie, for your presentation. There does not appear to be any questions, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move to questions of staff. I just make note that we're about 45 minutes left. I just make that note. We can run over a little bit, so. Councillor Ioannidis, you were first. Did you want to just buzz in? Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
I guess my question to staff would be, what was the rationale of conducting public engagement after the pilot and during the pilot, and then rather than before?
Through the chair, the intent there was to demonstrate to the public in the field what sidewalk clearing looks like, so they can be informed when they're responding to questions. And we can then very directly ask residents and the public, would you be willing to support this service level at this cost, knowing that it would take this long to complete with, for example, this much property damage and this much extra salt use. So we can ask very specific questions based on the pilot program and then ideally get informed responses back.
Okay. How does that engagement cover to those residents that do not want the service?
Sorry. You have to click back in and then just leave your mic on because you'll probably be answering a lot of questions. You're good now.
Sorry about that. They would have the option in that statistically valid survey, or if they live in an evaluation area where we are conducting the targeted surveys, or also in the online engagement platform, to very easily tell us if they don't support certain service levels at a certain cost or time requirement. So there'll be option, or people will have that option to respond and let us know that they don't support certain service levels.
Okay, so you're saying we're not going to spend any of the costs to, if the survey comes saying residents are not supporting this and we've committed these dollars, how does that alleviate that situation? Like, it to me seems like we're ahead of the game when we shouldn't be.
Well, the dollars that would be committed are for evaluation, data collection, and testing over the first winter. And then we would use that information to form our survey questions. I hope that...
Okay. Okay, Madam Chair, when it's appropriate, I have a deferral motion that I would like to put forward, but I want the discussion to move forward.
Do you have a till when? Just a till when, so that we know what you're thinking? Yeah. How long is the deferral? Yeah, I'm just trying to get...
Okay.
I'm trying to ask just...
Well,
you don't have to read your whole motion.
Okay, I would, a comprehensive public engagement process,
Okay.
whatever that takes,
Okay.
I'm leaving that in staff's hands.
Okay, thank you. All right, next was Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. First, I want to say that at the appropriate time, I'd like to move the recommendation. Then also that I want to say that this report was, for such a long and complicated issue, was really well done, really concise and clear, and so well done on the just. It's a breath of fresh air to really have such a short but concise and comprehensive report. Squeaky wheel is the word that comes to mind when I read the letter from Chicopee Hills. I fully understand why the person who wrote us a letter and then had it read out as well did what they did, and I think that's admirable. However, as was mentioned by Ms. Maxwell, this is a feeling that is felt throughout the city, and so I would hope that we can have staff be objective in their choosing of where the pilot takes place. And I wanted to ask a question regarding the number of people that would be part of the component E part of the project. Did I hear somebody say that it would just be capped at 50 individuals?
That's correct, yeah. 50 properties.
Yes? So why just 50? What if we get 50 applicants in the first 5 minutes?
So through the chair, we worked with the Working Center and identified what their capacity would be, at least in the first year. They do have a framework right now in place. They have a snow removal operation. They felt comfortable with 50 additional properties, and we should note that that would be to our bylaw standard. So that would include up to or around 40 visits per year per property, and it would include windrows as well. And the cost of that was also reflected, and we talked with the Working Center. So we just wanted to take that into account, at least for the first year, and to also see what the uptake would be. And if there was a lot of uptake and it performed well, maybe there'd be opportunity to expand down the road.
Okay, and is there a financial need component to this part of the component E? So, for example, if somebody has a disability but has perfect ability to income level that would indicate that they have the ability to pay someone else to shovel their snow for them, would they still be equally considered as somebody who's living on a fixed income?
So we looked at the model that the city of Guelph uses, and they ask residents, and it's based on an honor system, the series of questions including, can you afford your own services, or is there somebody that living in your home who is capable of clearing the sidewalk? In addition to, can you clear it yourself? And then they use those responses to assess who would be eligible, but it is based on an honor system.
So that's the idea that we'll implement here?
Yeah, we would follow something similar.
Okay. And then when we have this proactive bylaw enforcement officer come to investigate sidewalks, I'm just wondering, once they provide a letter of warning, will there be any indication that we do have a program? So if you require additional help to have your sidewalk cleared in the future, that they could be, sign up for it?
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. Yes. So I mentioned that the partnership grant is supplemental to component A, which is the proactive inspection. We want to be able to offer residents a solution versus just being, for lack of a better term, heavy-handed on the bylaw enforcement side of the inspection program. And we would identify the partnership either through the door hanger, providing contact information, and then also through our communications campaign that will be running over the upcoming year. So yes, they will be notified that the program's available.
So I'm just wondering if the uptake is really high at the outset, can we have staff report that to council for council's consideration to think about adding to the budget and perhaps finding an alternate partner in addition to the Working Center so that we would be able to address this need citywide rather than just for the first lucky 50 winners?
Ms. McGoldrick? Denise?
So through you, Chair, the very intention of next winter is to pilot these components and look to take back critical information in terms of whether to look at a full implementation. And so the 50 properties are incorporated as part of the pilot. we can provide information back to council in terms of what that uptake is. We would, and indeed our intent is to do that following the first year, the one-year pilot, to make decisions around what a long-term program would look like.
Well, no, of course, that's it clear that you're going to come back and report back after the whole winter season. I'm asking if we get 50 people signed up before the first snowfall even, if we can we just ask staff, I'm just asking that staff report back when we've hit our maximum or when we're approaching our maximum.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, we can certainly provide that information back to council.
Thank you.
Mayor Verbanovic?
Thank you very much, and I want to begin by thanking staff for this very well thought out and I think thoughtful report, both in terms of its information as well as the level of detail that's been done, but more importantly, the notion that you know what, you're not just looking at it from a sort of one solution model, but in fact, let's gather data so that ultimately the council of the day will be able to make a decision based on as much factual data as possible, taking into account the different experiences, taking into account the various microclimates that exist in the community, because we know, for example, that in Forest Heights, there's a different amount of snow that tends to fall than it does on the east side. Or even north of Forest Heights, as an example, and that's just that's a reality of the microclimates that we deal with. When we look at the recommendations that you've been put before us, you obviously engage the various committees. Did we go back and loop in, like I know there's been at different times citizens that have come forward. Have we gone back to them and made sure they were aware that this report was coming forward today?
We circulated the report to delegates that came forward in 2016 when that report came forward for the full citywide impact.
Okay.
So yes, they were circulated.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that they were aware and had the ability to be here. On the work that you've done in terms of these various recommendations, and I was a little confused what I thought was your answer about Guelph, where they go on an honor system and ask people if they can manage it on their own or not. I thought Guelph actually covered the whole city. Is that not the case?
So through the chair to clarify, this is specific to Windrose in Guelph,
to Windrose,
where they provide that service, but we would follow a similar questionnaire and vetting process that they do.
Okay. On the full winter maintenance service of all sidewalks, you list a number of cities there, Barrie, Guelph, London, Burlington. We heard from one of the delegations, Ottawa, which is one that I'm aware of. And we know, we've heard from even members of our own staff who live in Guelph that maybe the service delivery model isn't quite meeting the expectations of some citizens. Do we have a sense of how it's playing out in some of these other cities in terms of the dialogue we had with the staff there or with the community?
So we've been in contact with other municipalities who've taken on full citywide service of sidewalks to learn as much as we can. And we know complaints have risen significantly, and that's likely because, as you said, expectations were set as to what the service would be, both in terms of the performance of snow or ice removal and the time it would take. And maybe people didn't realize that there would be property damage, turf damage. So I think you're exactly right that expectations need to be managed. But part of this exercise, we would look at the data and then continue to work with those municipalities to learn as much as we can from them.
And I guess, like with any new service or service modification, communication is a big part of this going forward?
That's correct. So we've been working with our communications staff to ensure that we have the budget available to roll out a communications campaign so people are aware that there might be, for example, responsibility changes if they live in an evaluation area, and also that their feedback is welcome through the online platform that we're going to use. So communications will be robust through the process.
Have we looked at sort of just outside of the Canadian model, any winter cities and sort of their experiences from a service delivery point of view as well? I mean, I know sometimes some of the Nordic countries are referenced, and you know how what we do may potentially change both a modal shift in terms of moving people more towards walking, cycling, public transit use, as well as health outcomes as a result of people being more active. Have we looked at that? And is that something that could factor into some of the ultimate information that comes forward as we look at this?
Not through the first 3 or 4 months of the project. We haven't gone that deep just yet. We've mainly focused on the Canadian context. And just to maybe note that we know Kitchener has its own unique policies, microclimates, we have our own urban environment, and residents that have their own values and opinions. And we want to test these components in the Kitchener ecosystem, so to speak, so we can provide you with that data and the evaluation so you can make a decision based on our context, which we think is really important. So we can only learn so much looking at other municipalities, but they do provide some benchmarking that's useful.
And so if I can just, and then I realize my time is up, and so I'll just finish up by saying, I think if we can, as the ultimate report comes back, have some of that information around, and there's no question that Kitchener views on this need to be paramount, but information around changes in modal shifts, health outcomes, and so on, I think is something that we should have as additional information to help the subsequent council in their decision. Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I want to start off by clearly understanding what the provincial changes are. What simplified, what are the...
Rosalind? Through you, Chair Galloway-Seelock, as identified during the comprehensive winter maintenance review last week, the main changes for the maintenance standards revolve around active transportation. So where...
Revolve around what?
Active transportation. So in terms of cycling and walking, pedestrians and cyclists. Where the previous maintenance standards that we have had up until now were silent in winter maintenance of sidewalks and bike lanes, the new maintenance standards actually do have some provisions for winter maintenance of those facilities.
So but where do they differ? The talk was about 48 hours versus 24 hours. What is different there from where we are already?
The previous maintenance standards always allowed a municipality 48 hours to clear. I'm sorry, if I can back up. The 48 hours is new for sidewalks under the new maintenance standards. So again, it was silent previously, but they're allowing 48 hours now for a municipality to treat sidewalks that need treating.
Okay, so that was it. It was silent before,
yes.
But now there is provincial legislation there that says you have to do it within 48 hours.
Correct.
Okay.
24 hours that we've been talking about.
So it's more stringent than we were.
And what we were following before, or what we currently follow, is our bylaw. That's where the 24 hours comes from.
Okay. I'm in favor of where you're going here because you've done a lot of homework already. I just have a few questions. Like you're going to look at 5 cluster areas for the first item, okay, where you're patrolling things. A simple question: is it possible to look at 10 cluster areas? That way we have a cluster area in each ward. Is that possible, or is that double the cost?
Through the chair, we'll include as many as we possibly can. We don't have a proactive program in place as it exists today. We do have a sense of how much administration is involved when we go out to and reactively address bylaw complaints. So potentially we'll include up to 10, but we'll include as many as we possibly can.
Okay, I just would like to see if it's possible to cover so that everybody in the community feels part of it, okay? I just wanted to fully understand the one alternative is where you're going to go out and do over the 8 centimeter fall. Now, if I'm looking at this correctly, I tried to see what it would cost to do the whole city. So I came up with a figure of about $1.7 million based on those same costs. Is that correct?
Yeah, we had projected 2 million, and that was, again, an order of magnitude, just extrapolating the figures, and also including a little bit of inflation there, considering that would be a few years out.
Now, on that study, again, would it be possible to do half and half where we do the complete cleanup and the other half where we do just over the 8 centimeters to get some idea of the difference in cost of going from complete to 8 centimeters. Like you're going to do 40 kilometers, which is 1,500 properties. Can you break it into 20 kilometers and 750 properties? And it gives you, it answers both questions. Is that possible? Is that a consideration?
So doing both component B and C in half the size, is that the question?
Well, I'm looking at B. Like C is, you've changed the parameters there, and there you're doing everything.
Correct, all cylinders.
And that's doing it internally. The difference between B and C, too, is one is external contractors and one is internal. So I was trying to see, just using external contractors, can we have a look at doing it both ways?
I see what you're saying. So we did consider that approach. I think we need to note that we have a finite amount of time, one winter season, to evaluate and collect data. And we're going to be collecting unit rates both in terms of cost, how long it takes to complete the work, what resources are required, and we feel that we'll be able to extrapolate that data and apply those same unit rates to various programs regardless. So those unit rates really form the basis of these estimates. So we think that that data will be enough to estimate various programs regardless of what they are.
The only, when you're dealing with, I better come back because I have a number of other questions. Okay?
Sure, that would be great. Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. A few questions. It was touched upon at an earlier, actually, an audit committee, but can staff comment on if we went for the full service model, how much more salt we would be using than we do currently?
So as Karina estimated, it would probably be somewhere in the range of 4 to 5 times the amount of salt that we use today. In the component C evaluation area, we're going to monitor how much additional salt is required, and the region of Waterloo has a mathematical based model that we can input those figures into to understand the long-term impacts on our ground source water over the 20 to 30 year period. So we have a tool to evaluate those impacts.
Okay, thank you. That's concerning. I've heard anecdotally from other communities that have sort of the full service that there is significant costs with respect to repairing boulevards and properties that the sidewalk plows run into during the winter season. Have we looked at the costs of other municipalities, and have we figured the cost to go back and repair these properties in the estimates in the pilot?
So maybe Rosalind can jump in, but the material costs are negligible. It's the labor cost. And that is one of the things that we want to test through this program, is to actually have a stream where we can collect the data and the people hours required through April into May, and really evaluate and understand those costs. But we've included, based on our previous 5 years estimates of labor, we've included an allowance for that in this budget.
Okay, great. In terms of the the tax implications, could I get an idea of if we were to do the full service, what would and I know there would be different ways that we would potentially phase this in, but when it's all phased in, could I get an estimate on what the total tax impact would be?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Sure. So on the bottom of page 1.1-8, it talks about the magnitude being about $3.6 million per year. That would be about 3%, a 3% tax rate increase to fund the ongoing operating costs. And then there's the $4 million kind of one-time capital investment that we would probably not do through a tax rate increase on a permanent basis, but if we did, that's about 3.3%.
Okay, great. With respect to some of the funding, I noticed that there's a large amount coming from the Winter Control Reserve, $315,000. I did also notice, since we have our variance report today, we're projecting a deficit in that, $395,000. Meanwhile, there's only $493,000 sitting in that reserve. So that would put us roughly $200,000 into deficit. How does that Winter Control Reserve get replenished, and is that a concern?
So the Winter Control Reserve gets funding if the winter control operation has a surplus and the city as a whole is in surplus. We have put money into it more years than taken out in recent history. It's been around since 2012. It's definitely a good buffer to have for changing climate and different things that go on. Essentially, if we have no funding in that reserve, the deficit in winter control would fall to the tax stabilization reserve.
Tax stabilization, okay. Because it does, so if my math's correct here then, we are looking at running that reserve, if the projections are correct, about $200,000 to the negative.
Yeah, so through the chair, to clarify, we would take the winter control reserve down to zero, and then everything else after it would go to tax stabilization. And just again to clarify, the projected deficit for tax as a whole is $170,000. That does not include any transfer coming from the winter control reserve.
Okay. Thank you. Question on, I have some concerns as well about the citizen engagement. We've heard from people that are most impacted by this, which is certainly important, but have we done any research at all to date with respect to the wishes of the broader community?
No, we haven't. Outside of just informal monitoring of social media comments, we do find that people may feel that if the city was to take on this responsibility, that sidewalks would be cleared all the time or very early in the morning. And through this pilot or program component, we'd be able to demonstrate exactly how long that takes out in the field. So people answering survey questions are informed, and they don't feel as though, or they don't have the expectation that this work is going to be completed before they leave for work in the morning, but in fact it could be completed by the time they get home from work in the afternoon or in the evening, along with the property damage expectations as well.
Okay, all have further questions. Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, thanks. So a couple of questions to start off with. Have we ever studied and understood the cost time it would take our staff to do the sidewalks between the city lands with short distances? So for example, along Bean Drive, we own, there's a sidewalk along some green space. And then a little bit further down the road, let's say maybe half a kilometer, we own another piece so we clear those. Have we ever done any stats to find out if that little tracker was just to carry on down the sidewalk instead of going in and out of driveways and down the road and then back up again, to understand what the cost would have been to have done those pieces?
Through you, Chair Galloway-Seelock, we have not yet done a study to see the difference, the cost-benefit analysis between current practice versus going through. What we do know is that it becomes very difficult to, if you're going down one piece of sidewalk, why don't you to stop where you have to stop in front of our own city-owned properties and not continue further.
I'm sorry, I could not hear the last bit of your sentence, sorry.
We have not done a study to take a look at the cost difference between what we currently do versus just dropping the blade and going between city-owned properties. But we do know that we've had some anecdotal comments back to us about, if we were to do that, where do you stop? Right? Where does it ends up? You just keep going.
Right. I mean, so one additional example that I could have given is on Old Mill Road, where we're in and out. Let's say from Pinnacle to Dune Valley Drive. The perception, of course, of the community is, had you just gone straight down, you probably would have been faster. But that, again, is anecdotal, as you said.
And maybe, could I just add, our tractors travel significantly slower when the blade is down versus when the blade is up. And when the blade is down, we're presumably applying salt also. And if we were to keep that blade down between those sections when we're traveling from location to location, we would have to add more tractors and drivers to meet the 24-hour clearing period. And then there's the issue of inequity created if you happen to live along a path that we're traveling from location to location and you get snow clearing. So just some things to consider on that
Okay, and I agree with your last comment about the inequity, but I guess I would also be observing that citizens would say, how wasteful is it to go in and out? Yes, the tracker goes slower, and yes and no. Sometimes they put salt down and sometimes they don't. I think it would have been an interesting case study to have done some of that in advance before we did this, because we're already there, and we could have done some of that. Just to another question, and that was my understanding when I heard the first presentation at the COF, was that we were considering using independent contractors to do the different phases that we talked about, the different service deliveries. Now I'm understanding that we're using staff and purchasing new equipment during this pilot process.
Component B would be contracted out. Component B is the 8-centimeter trigger. And component C, where we clear for all snow and ice occurrences, that would be completed by in-house services and would require the purchase of one additional municipal tractor.
So there'll be a difference in understanding the cost then, because the cost of an independent contractor could be significantly lower if they're not out there as often. Whereas with staff, there's the purchase of equipment and staff time, etc. I'm just wondering if you're actually going to be comparing apples to apples.
So the contracted services are based on a few unit rates. The key unit rates being standby rates. So that's what we have to pay to the contractor to have equipment and staff available to clear snow if there's a snow event. And then the second piece is the labor, or the cost per hour for the labor. So if we wanted them to do a similar pilot to component C, which is for all snow and ice occurrences, we would still pay the same standby rate, but the amount of hours required would go way up. And that's where the cost difference would be. But we would have the unit rate to apply.
Okay. One of the other questions and concerns I think we hear quite often is about windrows, especially on corner properties. I mean, yes, it is extremely challenging for residents to clear the end of their driveway when the snowplow goes through, depending, of course, on the kind of snow. I mean, April was just a nightmare for everybody. Have we ever considered just understanding what would happen if we were to clear those intersections? To make, that was a perfect picture of that was put forward by Leslie Maxwell from the Mother about how difficult it is for everybody to cross from intersection to intersection. Have we thought about doing that as an independent project study and pilot project?
So thank you for flagging that. That's something that we would evaluate in both component B and component C, coordinating between road crew and sidewalk crew to make sure that those windrows, or the road crews go first and then sidewalk crews follow, so the sidewalk crews are clearing those windrows at crossing locations. So that's something we want to test out, both in terms of are there additional costs associated with that coordination? What does the timing look like? So that would be included in both of those components.
I have further questions. I'll cue in again.
Councillor Yunetsky?
Very good report, a lot of good details, and nice analysis that we could work with. Going for the question, I was mentioning about the budget, and Mr. Hagee mentioned about 3% on page 1.8 and then 3.3% in terms of the package. But there's the other components of it, the service delivery packages A, B, and D. Are they part of that, or is there additional money on top of that? Or additional money that'll be, and what, is that now a higher percentage?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Through the chair, those other components would be an additional cost.
So if we put the whole package together, what would everything be? Potentially, because I mean you got also estimated cost, and then you got order of magnitude cost if expanded. So I'm just trying to see what you're referring to, and I think that percentage you was looking at the ultimate, was it not, for page 1.8? But let's look at all the pages.
Correct. So presumably, if we're doing C, we are not doing B, because you're not going to plow all the time and at 8 centimeters. You would do it, so there would only be one of those costs. So the total cost would be fairly close to what you see in C. The other items for A, it's only $170,000, and D is another $78,000. So that would be about 0.2% on the tax rate on top of the 3.6.
Okay, so it's not a more significant issue.
Order of magnitude, A and D are quite small compared to either B or C.
Okay, thank you very much. In regards to the one of the recommendations is to where did I go here? To purchase another trackless municipal tractor. How many do we have right now?
Through you, Chair Callie Seelock, I had to defer to Eckert. We have 19 trackless units right now.
How many?
19.
Okay.
And the additional trackless unit is actually needed to keep up with growth, and we would be purchasing this anyways.
So just one more, that's all you need?
For the pilot.
Yeah. Okay. The coverage of doing a specific scoped area of 40 kilometers and 1,500 homes that you do, and it's talking about 5 clusters. Does each cluster have 40 kilometers and 1,500 homes, or is that 5 clusters taking all those 1,500 homes and working out to maybe 250 each or 300 each?
So that part of our detailed development is really identifying those areas and how much one proactive bylaw officer can handle. So we're not sure how many homes each of those clusters will contain at this point. That's something we'll work on over the summer months.
So I understand that. So will the 5 clusters each more or less have 1,500 homes? So you're looking at 7,500?
They won't include that much because of the administration involved with going out and proactively inspecting, monitoring the sidewalks, potentially issuing warnings, and going through the bylaw process. I can't really give an estimate at this time how many homes will be in each cluster, but we'll have as many as the bylaw officer can handle. And part of the pilot is to determine how many one bylaw officer can handle if we want to roll this out on a larger scale, for example, retaining 4 proactive bylaw officers, we'll have a very good sense about how much each of those officers can handle, both in terms of cluster areas and how many homes inside those clusters.
Okay, appreciate that. You made reference to Ottawa, and I didn't quite catch exactly everything, and maybe you can comment on it. I was there last winter for a couple of days on a weekend, and I went to skate in the Rideau Canal and all that. But when I was there, it was right in the middle of the winter. It was in the latter part of January, and there was a lot of snow around. The main roads had already been plowed and looked good, but I was in the side streets area, and those roads weren't plowed, and the sidewalks were atrocious in terms of you really couldn't walk. You had to go really back on the road, and it was just terrible. And I thought, what kind of service do they have? And do I understand they do the sidewalks there on a regular basis or periodic? Or help me out there.
We know that they do have a full city sidewalk clearing program. Unfortunately, I don't have the details of that program in front of me on my benchmarking slide.
It is my understanding that they have a citywide program. I'm not sure what the trigger is. I believe it's either 5 centimeters or 8 centimeters as their trigger. And I'm not, I believe it's through contracted services. So that's just based on my knowledge.
Yeah. It was regular residential street, you know, the snowfall was earlier in the week, and a few days had gone by and nothing had happened. So I thought, geez, they got lousy service here, but not knowing what program they have, et cetera. But it didn't look like any sidewalks were cleared, so I assumed it was a city-type scenario where the city comes in. But that's just an observation that I had, so I thought, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. Once again, thanks for this great report, and I really believe that the data and the feedback that we collect will help us make a really informed decision on this. Just one question. Are staff confident that the results that we achieve in the smaller pilot area can be achieved if they were to be implemented citywide?
I think if we roll those out on that smaller scale of 40 kilometers will give us a pretty good idea and will enable us to include all those challenges that we face citywide. So we'll be able to include a certain amount of curb-face sidewalk, for example, key destinations. So we feel it'll give us a pretty good picture of what it would mean to go citywide, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Everyone who has wanted to ask first round of questions has, so I have a couple of questions. And I just want to remind everyone we're at about almost 5 to 1, and we have 2 or 5 people who want second round of questions, and then we still have comments. So I just give you that in the context of timing for lunch and or the rest of our meetings this afternoon. So my first question is, do we have the ability to take 1 or 2 of the approaches and implement it to see if it minimizes those who don't clear their sidewalks? Can we pick like 1 component or 3 components to test?
Yes, we set up the staff report and the recommendation, and we listed out each of the components that we're recommending. So council has the option to decide which of those options are most feasible and suitable to proceed with.
So we would have the ability to implement just the bylaws, so just component A, at $170,000 per year. So having all 4 officers right off the bat, to see how that approach works. We would have that opportunity to just pilot that.
I think that's a discretion of council. The reason that we've recommended this approach is so we have a better understanding and evaluation of each of these pilots before we expand them, not only for cost and resident support, but so we have our framework and processes in place so we're more efficient come the following winter when we want to roll out on a larger scale.
Right, but if we spend $170,000 and it actually does what we want it to, we didn't spend $750,000 to figure that out. Would that be accurate?
That would be accurate.
Okay. That's all my questions. So next we have Councillor Marsh. Did you want to speak, or are you queued out? You're good? Councillor Zola.
Previously, I asked on component B if you could consider splitting it to complete and over 8 centimeters, and your answer was that you think you're going to get enough information from the direction you're headed that you'll be able to sort of deal with both. So I'm going to ask you the same question about component C, where is it worthwhile splitting that into half of it so that they do only over the 8 centimeters and half below?
Through your chair, Galloway Seelock, to Councillor Gazzola. I believe it would be, again, Council's direct discretion to see how you want to slice and dice. I believe if we split either B or C in half,
okay, I'll take
test.
that. I'll take that. I'm
Okay.
running out of time. So, yeah, you're saying from the test you're going to do, and I appreciate that. Just a few questions on. We're going to contract the thing B out, $67,000. Where did you come up with that figure? And is that for labor and resources, or?
So that was we worked with an external contractor just to get very high-level quote, and that includes...
They provide the equipment.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it includes a standby rate per month, which includes equipment.
Yeah. Okay. I'm surprised to do component C, we only need one more trackless, because right now you're doing 216 kilometers already, and you said you had 19 trackless. Are they used for other than that? So if you do 40 kilometers, does that mean you need 5 trackless?
So I think it's important to note the efficiencies when you have one trackless jumping around from scattered areas versus one trackless doing 40 kilometers of continuous sidewalk. So based on our calculations, one driver would be able to clear 40 kilometers of sidewalk in one 8-hour shift.
Okay, that's fine. If you're confident with that, that's fine. I would like to see, before we get back here next Monday when we ratify this, I would like to see a continuity of our winter reserve account, if we could, just so we know where we're sitting. And another question I had is, in a typical year, what percentage of our winter costs are in the November-December period as opposed to the January to April? Do you know that? Do we incur 10%?
I'll have to take a look at the finances, and I can provide you a 5-year average.
So through the chair, I can say budget-wise, we budget about a quarter at the end of the year and 3/4 at the start of the year.
And is that proved to be fairly accurate? Or?
I don't know that. I just know that's how we split the budget.
How long do these trackless units last?
Approximately 10 years.
Yeah, so when you put in the pot here, where did I see it? How much was the trackless unit we're talking? Oh, 165,000. That's for 10 years.
Correct.
Right, so really the cost for this one trial period is much less than that, because that unit can be used somewhere else. So. The other question I have, I'm surprised on the sensors, how costly they are. We're only getting 2 sensors. I thought with all this high tech and all of this, that I'm amazed. $40,000 a sensor? I would have hoped we would have gotten
So it's not
all
just...
sorts of sensors. Don't we have these built into our wires and all that?
So it's not just one single sensor. Those sensor stations do a multitude of different things, which I listed in my presentation. They read snow and ice depth, ice percentage, friction values, subsurface temperature, pavement temperature. So they do all kinds of things, and that's the data that we would need to lead to potentially more efficient responses.
I appreciate that, but that's all at one location. And they're there all the time. They can read a lot of stuff.
Correct. So we want to use them in locations where we know we have microclimates.
All right. That's fine. Thank you. I would have a comment later.
Yep. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mention before, but I think this report is excellent, and it was actually, if anything, it was probably more comprehensive than I had expected when we originally gave direction. My question is on again, just going back to the potential tax implications. I can't recall, at least in my 8 years on council, this would probably be the largest service level increase citywide and, to be fair, tax-related increase that I can recall. Is staff aware of anything greater than this?
That's true. This would be the single largest individual increase, and it would supersede any individual tax rate increase of this term of council.
Okay, very good. And I guess my question would be, I'm not sure if you can answer this yet, how aware, because giving our previous statistically significant surveys preferring maintenance of service levels and inflationary tax increases, how aware would you say the general community is of the latter part of that tax implication?
Well, that report went forward in 2016, which was made public. We've done different media campaigns over the past few weeks, and we've been informally tracking social media. So the word is out there. We'd have no way of formally stating how informed the community is, but we can probably measure that a little bit better through our engagement plan over the next year.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Madam Chair Galloway Seelock. My question is in regards again to the trackless system and the tractor. One of the members of council said we're going to purchase this regardless of whether or not we are going to go through this pilot or not. Is that accurate?
Through Chair Galloway Seelock, yes, that is the case. Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. So that supports the direction where I think I would like to see going. The other question is, if we were to do a comprehensive public engagement process, can we not do that in time before the snow season starts? So that way we get an accurate read on the community's needs.
Through you, Chair, we looked at the critical path if we were to lead with an engagement process, notably if we were to do a statistically valid survey and start that next month or in the coming weeks. Because of this being an election year and how long it takes to go out and actually receive those responses and analyze them and then turn them into a staff report, we'd probably be coming back to council in October or November with a recommendation, and we wouldn't have enough time to plan and gear up for this coming winter, and it would be the following winter before we'd be able to implement anything.
Okay, so when you're saying you don't have enough time to plan, don't you already have the process of what you're planned already in here and what you need to do?
Through you, Chair, at a high level, we have a fairly good idea. As mentioned in my presentation, we need to get into the detailed development, such as identifying evaluation areas, ensuring that we have sound data and evaluation methodologies, fully developing our engagement and communication strategy, and purchasing equipment and other resources. That's going to take us the 3 or 4 months that we have between now and when we have to implement the program. If we were to delay that, we wouldn't have enough time to implement for this upcoming season.
Okay, so if we're doing a full communication array and we're doing public engagement, wouldn't that negate some of the further communication to those areas that are affected? That will be increased levels?
If we led with the engagement?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it would. But to draw informed responses from that engagement, including the statistically valid survey, we just wouldn't have enough time to go through the recommendation process and get council's approval and then roll it out in the upcoming winter. We would have to be ready to go by October.
Okay. I guess my last question is, and maybe that's what part of the pilot's going to do, but if we receive significant amounts of complaints, and I know when we receive complaints on certain issues, I know how much time and staff time that has that been factored in at all?
So on our project team, we have staff from the call center. We've been working with them. They're aware that complaints may go up and they're going to get an increase in call volume. And as you mentioned, it's something that we're going to have to monitor over the upcoming winter season, and that will be part of what we bring back to council in June 2019 is, did complaints go up or did complaints go down for each of these different components?
Okay. I just have a little concern with that because I know how much even one single issue bogs down the city on all kinds of fronts. So I have concerns with that. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, just going back to the report, on page 1-4, you've listed the different snow, different bylaw infractions and clearing requests. In 2015, 2016, and 2017, the numbers went down, but how many snow events did we actually have? I mean, we all know we had in April of 2018, but what did we have in those years? Do we have any numbers around that? Because I think that might be the reason we've seen less complaints, because we've had less snow events.
Through the chair, you could be correct. I don't have that data in front of me. The intent of Table 1.0 were just to demonstrate the effectiveness of bylaw enforcement. And you'll see that after a warning was issued or a bylaw officer made contact, the amount of addresses where we had to go out and send for clearing is a very small percentage. So that was the intent of this chart, but you could be very right that the numbers reflect the weather conditions year over year.
Okay, and I think that's in a way what we may have to take into consideration too when we do send out proactive bylaw enforcement is exactly what the weather conditions are, right? Because for some people, clearing their snow is always an obstacle for them because they just, I've got residents who say it's not my job, I'm not doing it. And for others, it could be just a challenge of work-life balance kind of thing. And that's probably why those ones were cleared quickly.
Of course.
As opposed to, okay. So I asked a question about the windrows. Have we been able to understand the tax implications in other municipalities when they went from, no sidewalk maintenance to full sidewalk maintenance? And then, of course, we know that North Dumfries does it, but they're a much smaller community and may have less sidewalks. But then I guess we would be able to use a formula that would extrapolate what that cost implication would be for us. Have we been able to do that background work yet?
Through the chair, no, we don't have that data in front of us, but that could be something that we bring back to council with the data and the costing that we come up with over the next year.
Okay. So one of the challenges that I see with this pilot project moving forward is that the citizens who are not in the pilot areas may not understand the full implications of a citywide clearing or a post 8-centimeter clearing. The people, of course, in those pilot areas will understand it, but will, somebody on, Pearwood, just to make up a name, court have an understanding of what that means to them, because they live further out, maybe they're a brand new subdivision, and we definitely won't be able to get there within 48 hours. How will we message that out to people? Because I think that's going to be a harder message to send to people, to say, yep, we're going to do this. We've seen these results in these pilot projects, but can we get out all the way out to your court or your crescent or your street in the same time as we did for the pilot projects?
Through the chair, so I think there's maybe two issues there. There's one of inequity, so it creates some inequity between people who live in an evaluation area and those who don't. And through our communications campaign, we're going to have to be very diligent and in letting people know why we're doing this and what the benefit is. Again, informally monitoring social media and emails that have come in, it seems as though a lot of people, including our committees, understand the justification as to why we want to take this approach and why we want to start small before we scale up. And then the second part is we want to use the results of testing this stuff out in the field, and we can do things like take pictures of what the sidewalk looks like, let people know how long it takes, how much extra salt we have to use, property damage, and work those into our survey questions. So when people are responding to survey questions, they can see, okay, this is the service level I'm agreeing to for this cost. Am I supportive of it or not? So we're going to have to, in our survey and our engagement, we're going to have to take and make it very easily digestible for people when they're responding to our surveys.
Okay, very good. I think that that's a really great approach to take, because that's sort of, your questions will be in response to what you're seeing happening.
Correct.
In the situation. And you probably had that in your report, but there were lots of other things that I was pulling out of it as well. So, but thank you. I think that's, I think if the public understands that the questions are related to actual situations, they may be able to answer those questions, as opposed to sort of what do you think or imagine or maybe or possibly, right? Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, that's all the questions that we have. That's okay. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair Galloway-Seelock. Just wanted to follow up on a couple ones. There were some questions around concerns around call center volumes, and you had some discussions with staff already around that. Is it fair to say, though, that after we have a snowfall already, there's a level of call center calls that come in because of sidewalk complaints, road complaints, and so on? In other words, my experience has been when I go to the call center after a snowstorm, there's peaks that happen. Is that correct?
Through Chair Galloway-Seelock, yes, that is correct. Currently, when we actually declare a snow event, we actually communicate with the CCC to say, we know that you're going to get a high number of calls, we're doing our best, and then they hold their calls at that point until we actually say, okay, we're ready to receive phone calls for areas that we may have missed.
So what, in fact, we may experience during the pilots is that if there are some issues with the pilot, the nature of the calls may change, but it won't necessarily be an influx of calls. It may just be a different type of call. Instead of calling to complain that, hey, there's all these sidewalks that aren't being cleared, I now have an issue because it's not cleared fast enough, or I have an issue because, you know, you cut up a chunk of my sod in the process of doing it.
That's absolutely correct. I think we'll just see a change in the types of calls that we're receiving, and I believe they will likely be around expectations. You're not meeting what I thought you were going to do, that sort of call.
Okay. And the other question was just going back to the cost issue. So back in 2016 when we did the report, there was an approximate estimate that was out there. It was fairly widely reported in the media and circulated and so on. And that number has been talked about now as well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So while we don't have ultimate numbers because we don't know where we might land, the overall sort of big number for the average household in Kitchener has been out there for at least a couple of years. And I know I've certainly received lots of emails from people admittedly on both sides of the issue, but people who are saying, I'll pay double that, or I'll pay half, I absolutely don't want to pay it. But the point is that number, that 40-ish number has been out there for some time.
That's correct, and we were very intentional in that we didn't want to put out yet another estimate.
Right.
We called it very intentionally an order of magnitude number in our report, and that number we're going to test out in the field, assuming this goes forward over the next year. So we have a much more accurate and robust estimate.
Thank you.
All right, now that's all the questions that we have. So I'm opening up to comments. I note that we're at I note that we're at 1:15 and we have delegations for 2, so I just ask you to conduct yourselves accordingly. Councillor Ioannidis here bringing forward a deferral motion. We'll start with that and then we'll go through the list. We're not going to avoid comments at this point. We're knee deep. Oops, I just cleared everybody.
Okay. that the proposed winter sidewalk maintenance program is outlined in Infrastructure Services Department Report INS 18023 be deferred until city staff can conduct a comprehensive public engagement process, statistically significant survey. Deferred until staff feel what time is needed to conduct the public survey. And the reason why I'm putting forward the deferral is I feel like I don't disagree with that as a city that we should be looking at this issue as a whole, and that we should have some form of snow removal for individuals who are in need of assistance. But I do have some concerns, and my concerns are, I have some with the environment, with the additional salt usage, the costs of the pilots, which I feel is very significant, without really knowing what the residents in a broader community want. I feel like we are representing half of the residents without really communicating to the entire residents, because we really don't have a clue who wants this service level or not. And from the communication that I've received, it's around 50-50 with those who want it and those who don't. And are we going to provide tax rebates to those residents who don't want this service? Because if we don't, I feel like we're penalizing them, and this is just an additional tax. I have concerns with other cities that are experiencing 40% of the sidewalks being cleared by residents already, and to me, it seems like this is an inefficient use of city resources if already 40% of the sidewalks are already being cleared. GRAC as well has come forward with stating that they feel the complaint basis is skewed, and this is why I think there's another reason why we need a more broader, comprehensive public engagement. So I think, to me, there's a lot of what-ifs, and I'm not comfortable without getting the broader scope of the public buying or not. And if the public wants this, then and if overwhelmingly they want this, or the broader public wishes this, then I all am for this. But until then, I'm not comfortable without knowing what the what-ifs are.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola, you are next.
Yes.
Hold on.
Are we making all our comments now, like on the deferral and
We are making every comment that you want. You have your 5 minutes. Right, we're dealing with everything. So if anybody else has a motion or anything you're bringing forward, I'd like you to do that now, just because we're running out of time. Okay. Councillor Gazzola, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll try to speak quickly. I'm normally not one that will support spending $800,000 in a year when we haven't planned for it previously. But in this case, staff have done a lot of work already, a lot of good work, but they're not in a position yet to give all the answers. I won't support a deferral on this engagement. Having the engagement before we start the program, to me, is really a waste of time, because we have to do this test program so that we can answer the questions that will come from the public engagement. We have a lot of hearsay things now, but we don't have a good way of measuring those. So already I've heard from a lot of people, and people on this issue are not lukewarm. They're for it or they're against it. What better time to deal with this issue? This is an election year when everybody's going to be knocking on the doors. People will be well aware of it, and we will get a lot of public engagement for those who are running for councillors, for future councillors. Okay. Another point, the mayor asked if staff have gotten back to people that have inquired about it. I've heard directly from someone that had sort of led this for the last number of years. He was pleased the staff did get back to him, spent time reviewing with him, and now the next step that they're concerned about is that we've got all of this. You know, are we going to really do something about it, or just going to defer it, put it off again? this whole question of future costs on taxpayers. I did a lot of work on the weekend, and I can from going at it from my basis, can concur with the rough estimates the staff have come up. I think the staff estimates are somewhat conservative on the high side. I can see going down the road this item that Councillor Fernandez mentioned about currently the 216 kilometers we do, the staff go from one lot to another. Well, if we do go that full route, there will be savings there. I can see that. Another area that hasn't been taken into account is the cost that we have to put into it now to patrol it, to police it, and all that. If we do ever go that ultimate step, a lot of those costs disappear. So they have to come out. And another thing, you really have to look at not the full capital cost of going into it in 1 year. Equipment lasts 10 years. So these things, but the only way to really understand it is to do some tests. And then I'm sure that the stories coming out of those tests from the people that are involved can spread to the entire community to get so that everybody gets a clearer understanding of the whole issue. So I think if we're ever going to do anything, I don't know which way do we go now, this way or that way, but if we're ever going to do anything, we need to fully investigate it and do it now and not just put it back on the shelf. So I'm totally opposed to a deferral, and I hope we can move on and let's find out, like the staff, the basis that the staff have come out with is excellent. They've covered a lot of angles as much as they could, but you really need some live action to cover all the angles, or the majority of them, and we need to do that, and it's something we owe our taxpayers. I'm confident we will hear from our taxpayers. This is a question that's already been on their mind, and we will hear from them, and they will be represented. So I hope we go ahead with the recommendation as presented by staff.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you. Again, I want to thank staff for their work on this. This is a lot of great information, and it's very comprehensive, and I think it's a good guideline as to what the options could be. Having said that, I will be supporting the deferral. And the rationale, I've a couple different reasons. Number one is I don't feel like we have a strong enough mandate from the people. We've certainly heard from some select groups that are impacted by this, but I simply do not feel comfortable spending $750,000 on a pilot without knowing what the sentiment is of the general public. I think a statistically significant survey ahead of time, if it comes back significantly opposed, then maybe we take some of the options, the gold standard options, off of this list from day one. I will say I am 100% committed to solving this problem. It's just a matter of how we attack it and getting some feedback from our residents on how we do it. I think one of the things that's lost here is I don't think the residents are aware that if this is approved, whether it's phased or not, would be one of the most significant single tax increases that I've seen. And I'm not sure people are aware of that. There's been all sorts of figures thrown around in terms of the cost per household. I don't think those are necessarily accurate. We've heard the average household. We don't know what the median household is. And I think this is something that we need to get some feedback from the people. Lastly, as we've heard, to fund this pilot, we are essentially going to be raiding our reserves. We'll be wiping out our winter control reserve, potentially digging into our tax stabilization reserve, and I just simply don't think it's responsible to do that until we have a better mandate from the people on what approach they want us to see.
Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Madam Chair, I also agree with the deferment, mostly because at the moment I'm greatly concerned about creating what I consider to be totally unreasonable expectations out there among the taxpayers. even as we just investigate these kind of programs, I think there's a lack of understanding and a lack of knowledge out there, some of which comes through in the answers we've had today from staff. I don't envy staff working on this. I think they've done a great job, but there's so many variables that I've heard, especially relating to the expectations around snow clearance. I want to see a better, more efficient way of clearing snow across the city, because I hate shoveling snow as much as my neighbors. But at the same time, I'm worried about a huge increase in the use of salt, and I'm concerned about the huge increase in taxation that I think this will bring on. And I don't think we're hearing at the moment, as has already been said, I don't think we're hearing accurate dollar figures on this. I think this fall at election time there's going to be all kinds of pledges made on snow clearance, and that the city will clear every inch of snow in a matter of hours. But I honestly can't see citywide snow clearance happening, especially with the realistic costs attached. So I'll be voting for the deferral. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Galloway Seelock. And again, I just want to reiterate my thanks to staff for the comprehensive piece of work that they've done on this. And I just want to remind Council that this isn't an issue that we're dealing with for the first time today. In fact, it's an issue that we've been dealing with for several years during this term of Council. We had initial reports come forward in 2016. At the time, and rightly so, we were anticipating new regulations to come down from the province of Ontario, and the commitment we made to the public and to the community and all the delegations that engaged and participated at that time was that we were going to wait until that information came forward, staff would consider it, and staff would come forward with their recommendations about how to proceed. That took longer than expected. It finally came down. Staff did the work. Staff engaged with the communities, and now we're dealing with the report that's in front of us. I want to compliment staff as well on the level of engagement that they engaged in, because quite frankly, unless you're talking about someone who never leaves the building that they reside in, we've pretty much covered everybody through the engagement. We've covered our youth, we've covered our seniors, we've covered those from the disabled community, we've covered the TriTag folks that represent the entire community in terms of folks who either walk or cycle, and as far as I know, most people have the ability, not everybody, but most people have the ability to walk, and so they are users of our sidewalks. I think the other thing that's important to remember is that what's being proposed here is an educated, informed approach so that the future council that's going to be dealing with this issue isn't starting all over again, but in fact is building on the work that's been done and is going to have some actual statistical data. And I've heard many people around this horseshoe talk about the importance of let's have fact-based decision-making. Well, here's an opportunity to ultimately have fact-based decision-making, and unfortunately what I'm seeing is an attempt, it seems to me, to avoid that and simply defer this issue because we don't want to deal with this at this time. I want to go one step further and say to Council that while I believe citizen engagement is extremely important on this issue and needs to be part of the decision, it's not the only thing that's going to be part of the decision that ultimately the Council of the day will make when dealing with this issue. Many of you, particularly the younger part of this council, won't recall the days when sidewalks didn't have ramps. But I can tell you, growing up, in those early days of growing up, sidewalks did not have ramps on them. At one point, for reasons of accessibility, whether it's mums walking with strollers, kids on bikes on sidewalks, which maybe they shouldn't be, but they are, on them, people in wheelchairs, we moved to a point where we started putting ramps on all sidewalks. And now sidewalks, as they get reconstructed, and I don't think there's many left around the city, but I'm sure some could probably tell me if there are, every intersection has a ramp situation. That wasn't done by some sort of statistical poll of the community at the time. It was done because it's the right thing to do. And so what I want to remind people is that fundamentally, when this decision is made, the issue of accessibility and mobility is not an issue that should be left to some sort of statistical majority on a survey, but it's rather a moral issue. Either we believe that our citizens have the right to have an accessible community and a mobile community, or they don't believe in it. I get this is a complex issue, and I get there's people on both sides of this issue. I've heard from many of them. But fundamentally, as a community, we need to deal with this issue over the fullness of time. And having this statistical information coupled with the best survey going, and that's called a municipal election this coming October, we'll have the information that we need so that a future council can make the decision that's necessary to move this forward. So I would urge people to not support the deferral, and in fact to support the motion that is coming from staff, that is well thought out, that is consistent with, I think, previous dialogue that's happened on this issue, and see it move forward.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. At this time, I'd like to bring forward a resolution, and Ms. Saunderson, I'll give this to you. This is not to be part of the winter sidewalk maintenance review, but rather in addition to it. It stems from a conversation from quite a ways back with Councillor Davey, who made a comment about putting snow blowers throughout the city. It's something that myself, I know Councillor Singh have also discussed, but I kind of took this to a deeper level. I've spoken with a number of staff, Ms. McGoldrick, Mr. Chapman, Mr. McCrimmon-Jones, Mr. Joseph, Mr. May, Ms. McNeil. The idea is that you see it there, that a grant fund in the amount of $10,000 be funded from the Capital Contingency Reserve, established to fund up to 10 community-shared snow blowers at a contribution limit of $500 each, including the cost to administer, communicate, monitor, and evaluate a shared snowblower pilot initiative to provide residents with a resident-led, city-supported opportunity to help one another clear snow from sidewalks and driveways. So I'm fully aware that this is not the ultimate solution to our issues here. It's an incentive to encourage a group of neighbors to clear sidewalks on their streets and maybe go a little bit further. In the talks I've had with staff, we can establish the parameters after, but my vision is that a group of maybe 3 or more neighbors get together, they apply for this grant, they work out their own plan to clear the snow off of their sidewalks and hopefully others. It's a great way to get some of the windrows at the end of the streets cleared off. They can use it to clear their driveways and the windrows at the end of their driveways too.
Did you have any comment that you wanted to make outside of that with?
No, this is just bringing this forward.
You're just bringing that forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
The comments there are fine.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Yurnatsky, you're next. Oh, I thought I clicked you on. You want to know what? Can you cue back in? I accidentally turned you off. My apologies.
Okay, I didn't realize you turned it off.
No, I think I did.
Oh, okay, thank you. It's rather ironic that we're discussing winter sidewalk program here for big snowfalls and snow events on one of the hottest days of the year. And it would be good to have the warm weather to winter. We wouldn't have to worry about the snowfalls, but that's
climate change, that's another issue. I'm not prepared to support this deferral. I think we've come a long way with staff with the report that's before us today. It's an excellent report. We've waited for it, although we've discussed this over the last couple of years with previous reports. And this is basically the big one that we need to address right now. Staff have done a great job. The information is there. We should move forward. They have done already engagement with various groups and committees that are in attendance here for some of them. We received some emails, all of us, back and forth from people already. I have heard from my group of constituents, yes, both in favor and some against it, so it's a 50-50 more or less split. But I think this is a pilot project that needs to move forward to get a better appreciation as to where we're going on it, doing the pilot projects, doing these various evaluations that will take place over a year, maybe 2 years, depending on the severity of the winter or non-severity of the winter. And it just needs to be done. I think it's a project that moves forward. It is an election year. We'll hear it if we're going door knocking as to whether it's a good one or not, and we'll have a better appreciation over the year. And then after the evaluation is done by the city staff. So I'm prepared to support the report. I'm not prepared to support the deferral, and I'm also not prepared to support the contingency plan either.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
So before I make my comments, I have a question about Councillor Schneider's proposal motion. I'm wondering if procedurally we should maybe just take it outside of the deferral and the motion that's here.
I'll be taking it completely separate from the recommendation.
So, I'm sorry?
I will be taking it completely separate of the recommendation. So I will deal with the deferral, I will deal with the recommendation from staff, and then I will deal with Councillor Schneider's motion.
Okay, I appreciate that, because I think in the way there may be a number of questions that maybe arise from the motion. Although I see some interesting validity and some interesting ideas and concepts in community building that can come out of that. The report that has been created by our staff, I've heard it many times through advisory committees and sitting at the COF with Aaron and Rosalind, and I think it's really a good way to go. It's going to be hard for the majority of the citizens who are not part of that pilot project to understand why they weren't chosen, and that's going to be a very difficult challenge, I think, for our staff to figure out what's the right area, what's the right component to this. But this is a very well thought out and often asked for, requested, begged for, even people who have said to me, it's not my job, it's not my job. So I think we've got to take all those into consideration. We've heard a lot of engagement. We've heard from GRAC, we've heard from TriTag, we've heard from Leslie Maxwell, and I've heard from a lot of constituents who are saying, you want us to walk to school, then make it possible. And I've experienced the challenges with my parents, who both are seniors, who have walkers, who have mobility issues, every time I take them out for an appointment or for even just for lunch. It is difficult, and I'm just one person trying to take out two seniors with two walkers. I can't imagine somebody who has to deal with that every single day. To do the survey before people have a complete understanding about the implications of the different programs, I think is a disservice to the survey. People have to have some understanding of what the questions are, and I really liked Aaron's answer when I asked him, how are we going to pose those questions? You're going to have actual situations. Case studies are always the best way for people to make a knowledgeable response to a survey. The ones that are multi-choice and are a bit vague, I don't know that it's always as statistically significant as we would like it to be. But if you know what you've seen the examples, I think that's much better. salt increase is a concern for me as somebody who's been very outspoken about our water resources and our environment. But I think as we go through this pilot process, we may actually we'll definitely have a better understanding of how much salt we'll need to apply. Maybe we will be able to apply less because we will be clearing sooner, quicker, and maybe climate change will help us, maybe it won't. So as we move forward with this, I'm in support of the staff report. I'm in support of the pilot. I will not be in support of the deferral. We need to get moving, and we need to move forward on this. Many people in our community have waited for this, and they've spoken out. Let's move ahead. Chair, will we be having any comments on Councillor Schneider's?
Now's the time.
Now's the time, okay. So very quickly, because I have a minute left, I think community building in this sense is really important, but I am concerned about liability. I'm also concerned about what happens when neighbor A and neighbor B and neighbor D all decide to buy the snowblower, and then neighbor D moves away. How do we deal with that? We share a snowblower with our neighbor. We've talked about what happens when they decide that they're going to move away in a year or so. So I've experienced the same thing. Sharing a snowblower with a couple of neighbors is a wonderful opportunity to help each other. But I think we need to be a little bit more cognizant of the implications that this project, this pilot, could bring at this point in time. I'd like us to move forward with what we've already have before we add another complexity to it.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. So first, I'm unfortunately not able to support the deferral because I think this staff report is comprehensive and it's something that we really need to do. Car culture is still such a very strong part of our community. We're all car-centered, and we have meetings, or jobs that you can really only get to by car. Bus services aren't comprehensive yet. The LRT isn't running yet. We don't question yet at all the cost of clearing roads after every snowfall, but we do need to make sure that we ensure the people with mobility challenges are able to get out and about in a timely way. It is true we don't have a statistically valid survey. However, we have done a lot of consultation already, and I think it's time for us to move forward. I'm really interested to see the study results, and in particular, I hope that the staff will be able to have a question on the targeted surveys that ask about whether or not there's someone in the household with a mobility challenge, and then the effect of the pilot on that individual. Just wanted to put that out there so that we can ensure that we're keeping those folks in mind. And also, do you use a stroller, that type of thing, so that we have a really good feel for that. As far as the arguments for deferral, concerns about salt use. Well, salt use is high. It is a problem, and it's high regardless of who salts the sidewalk, whether it's the city or whether it's private homeowners. It's just how it is a problem, but it's not something that we can solve by avoiding citywide snow clearing. I also feel that we need to support Councillor Schneider's motion. I myself, in our neighbourhood, we share a we're lucky enough to have neighbors that we got to know over the years and then decided, hey, let's share a snowblower. We've got 5 people. One of them did move away, but we invited a different neighbor to take a share, and it's working beautifully. We are already a risk-averse we have a risk-averse climate. This is not a big risky business. People do it all the time, and it's going to be easy. I think that buffer of $5,000 that would allow for staff to use as an administration cost or communicating, monitoring, and evaluating the program, they can use that to look at how to ensure that neighbors are going to use the snow blower in a fair way and are going to make sure that it's done properly. So those are my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. I have 3 more people in the queue to speak a second time. I really don't want to go around a second time, and I have a few comments I'm going to make first. Okay, you can clarify after. I'm going to make my comments first, but I really, we're at 1:45, and we've got delegations coming in 15 minutes, so unless it's imperative, I ask that you click out. So my comments are, I don't have a problem with investing in this service, but I just feel there's a more financially responsible way of trying to combat this problem. By just choosing components A and E to move forward, we would spend only $175,000 versus $750,000. And I think proactive bylaw would make a huge difference. Level of service is key, and I worry that the expectations of timing around clearing of snow is not fully understood. It could be up to 48 hours before the city clears your sidewalk. You have to step over your sidewalk to clear your driveway. I believe that by implementing component A, it would help everyone ensure mobility and accessibility issues, because as you can see in Table 1, 94 to 98% of people have responded to bylaw infractions. That would make our community a lot more accessible and mobile. And I think that education is important, and by having bylaw be proactive, we can do that education in getting everybody out to clear their sidewalks, not within 48 hours, but maybe within 8 hours of the end of a snowfall, which would be much better for everybody across the city. I end as I began. I don't have a problem with investing in accessibility and mobility and this increase in service. So those are my comments. Councillor Ioannidis, you have something to clarify?
Yes, thank you. I just want to clarify that I didn't say anything or regards that staff didn't do a great job with this report. I think staff done an amazing job on this report. As well, I want to clarify that this deferral is not a tactic to delay the issue, and also this is not a tactic to delay the moral issue. If it was a moral issue, then you should stand up today and say you support the full rollout, not a pilot project. So that's where I.
Mayor Urbanovic.
Just very quickly on Councillor Schneider's motion, because he moved it afterwards, I will be supporting it. While I don't think it's the answer for the bigger problem, I think it does has merit from a community building, neighborhood, good neighbors, love my hood perspective, and I'll support it in that regard.
Councillor Zola.
Yeah, even though you had said put everything else on the table, it wasn't, and I didn't get a chance to comment on that. At this point in time, I will not support it because there are so many unknowns. To me, it should all go into that mix that we're looking at over the next several months. In the fullness of time, I may well support that, but let's put that in with all of the other things that we're looking at. Right now, it's premature.
But would you want to make that amendment that it just be looked at in the context of the pilot program?
It's well worth looking at, but we need to get all of the answers. So I would add that to the other things that they're looking at. Yes, if that's an amendment. Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's all the comments that we have. So we're going to deal with first the deferral motion. Recorded vote's been called. Yeah. Figured that would happen. So voting's open. Deferral, this is for the deferral motion. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's defeated. So now we move to the main motion. Yes, Councillor Davey?
Yeah, not commenting, just I would ask, and I don't need it to be recorded because we have cameras recording our hands, but could we vote on the components of this A, B, C, D, and E separately?
Sure.
If it's easier, I'm not sure what the rest of, well, actually your comments would be different somewhat than mine, but yes, I don't intend on supporting B and C personally, so.
Sure, we can do a recorded vote on everything. Okay. So we are going to currently deal with just component A. Recorded vote. Everyone understand? Just component A. That's unanimous. Now component B. Those in favor? Those opposed? That carries. Component C. Those in favor? Those opposed? That carries. Component D. Those in favor? Those opposed? That carries. And component E. That's unanimous. The remainder of the report. So the track lists and staff to report back. Those in, oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Those in favor? Those opposed? That carries. All right, so we've dealt with the whole report, right? Okay, so we have the last thing we need to deal with is Councillor Schneider's motion with regards to the grant for snow, and it's been amended for snow clearing with neighbors. That's the gist of it. And Councillor Gazzola has amended it to say that it should be looked at within the realm of the components that we just voted on. Say that again? Sure.
And
sure.
Just trying to understand how would it differ? Are we just saying that, I just want to ask Councillor Gazzola. Yeah, I know your name. What is the, how would it differ in terms of the number of dollars?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, I would like you to. Just request.
No, I don't know the we don't know there are a number of issues that we have to deal with, liability and all of these things that we always get hung up about. It's appropriate that we look at that in line with everything else before we deal with it. So it's just another component to look at and get all the answers before we make a quick decision today without all the answers.
So what you're saying, Councillor Gazzola, is actually deferral to come back with the rest of the recommendations and looked at. What I was suggesting was that you amend it just so that it's looked in and brought back, like it's already has a trial, but it's brought back within the context of this report. So.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for a deferral until we have all the information.
So you're deferring it.
And I'm deferring it to when the other stuff comes back.
So July 2019.
Yes.
June 2019.
So just while we have you, Councillor Gazzola, are you saying that you don't want to even pilot this and test it out?
No, because I said there are too many unknowns.
I appreciate the clarification.
Okay. I'm going to take the deferral and I'm going to deal with it. I know there's people who want to make comments, but I think we can deal with it. We can deal with that quickly. So is those in favor of the deferral? Those opposed? You're deferring Councillor Schneider's motion. Okay. So that is defeated. So now we're back at Councillor Schneider's motion. A recorded vote. Councillor Ioannidis, is it imperative you speak? No. Councillor Schneider, is it imperative you speak? Sure.
Included in this cost is an evaluation. This is also a pilot. So again, it's not intended to be the overall solution, more of an incentive to encourage more community-based neighborly connections and snow blowing, so hopefully more sidewalks, which is the ultimate goal of this, get cleared.
Okay. 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Is staff able to answer the question, do they see this as a workable proposal? Yes, no?
I believe the answer is yes, as they've worked with Councillor Schneider on the motion, but is that yes? The answer is yes. Okay. Recorded vote's been called. We're dealing with Councillor Schneider's motion. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. We are going to recess this meeting for 20 minutes. Come back in 20. Okay.